Hi everyone, welcome back to the fourth and final part of our Grammar Refresher series. My name is Rebecca Alvarado and this final episode will be about tenses. One thing to keep in mind while you go through this guide is that there are many tenses and ways of using verbs in the English language. Try not to focus on memorizing every single kind of tense and form of a verb. Rather, you should make sure your verbs meet the following criteria. Your verb should convey your time frame as accurately as you intend. This is known as verb tense. Some specific types of verb tenses include past, present, and future. Your verb should also match with your nouns or nouns, form, or forms. This is known as pluralization. Finally, your verb should convey the meaning you intended to convey. This is known as part of speech and refers to your verb's grammar within a sentence. As long as your verb satisfies these conditions, even if you don't know the name of the particular tense you're using, that's what's most important. It is more important to be correct than to be perfect. Today we will first discuss the simple past tense, then we will talk about the simple present tense, simple future tense, then irregular verbs. First, we'll go into the simple past tense. The simple past tense, sometimes called a preterite, uses verbs that describe events that have already occurred. To identify these forms of verbs, remember that many simple past tense verbs end in ed. Some examples of the past tense are I walked, we walked, you walked, she walked, they walked. Notice the ed at the end of these examples, which are often characteristic of the simple past tense. There are additional forms of the past tense. However, the key thing to take away is that they always describe events that have occurred in the past. Now you try. Put the simple past tense verbs in their correct form using the following examples. My partner and I blank how to tap dance. It blank a lot last night. She blank over to work before she was late. I blank a long shift at my job today. They blank their eating habits over the summer. We all blank when we saw the framed photograph. You can pause the video here if you would like to take some time to work on putting the verbs in their correct form. In the first example, learned is the correct way to put the verb in the simple past tense. In the second example, rained is the correct form of the verb. In the third example, she hurried over to work. Hurried is the correct verb form. I worked a long shift at my job. Worked is the correct verb form. They changed their eating habits over the summer. Changed is the correct verb form. In our final example, we all smiled. Smiled is the correct form of the verb. Notice how all of these examples change the regular form of the verb to the past tense form of the verb by adding an ed at the end of the verb. Now let's discuss the present tense form of verbs. The simple present tense use of verbs describes events that are currently happening. Some examples include I walk, we walk, you walk, she walks, they walk. These verbs are all examples of the present tense, since they describe an action that is occurring at the present moment. There are many additional forms of the present tense, but just remember that the present tense always describes events that are occurring or continuing to occur in the present. Now try filling in the correct present tense form of the verbs in parentheses using the following examples. They blank many followers. My brother blank home at 2 p.m. Vanessa blank the local news. She blank her homework every day after ballet. Our professor blank close to the university. I blank plain white teas. You can pause the video if you need extra time to think about this. In the first example, have is the correct present tense form of the verb has. In the second example, gets is the correct present tense form of the verb get. In the third example, watches is the correct present tense form of the verb watch. In the fourth example, she does her homework. Does is the correct present tense form of the verb do. In the fifth example, our professor lives. Live is the correct verb form. In I wear plain white tees, wear is the present tense form of the verb. Notice how, for most simple present tenses, we form the present tense form of the verb by adding an s or es at the end of the word. Now that we've covered the present tense, we can discuss the future tense. The simple future tense makes use of verbs that describe events that have not happened yet but will occur at some point. The future present tense is often characterized by the use of will before its verb. You may often see this, but not always. Some examples of the future tense are I will walk, you will walk, she will walk, and they will walk. There are many additional forms of the future tense, but the most important thing to remember is that the future tense always describes events that will occur at some point in the future. Now try filling in the correct future tense form of the verbs in parentheses using the following examples. The bus blank at 8:45 a.m. They blank to eat breakfast at a fancy restaurant. Someone is outside waiting for me. I blank them to come inside. George blank his favorite band in August. I blank to the schedule I made for myself. Class blank early on Monday morning. Feel free to pause the video at this time if you would like extra time to think about this. In the first example, the bus leaves. Leave is the correct future tense form of the verb. In the second example, will be going to have describes the future tense of the verb. In the third example, will tell is the future tense of the verb. In the fourth example, George will be going to see his favorite band. Will be going to see is the future tense of the verb. In our next example, will commit is the correct future tense form. In our final example, class starts early on Monday morning. Starts is the correct present tense form of the verb. Notice how many of these examples use will before the verb to denote something expected to occur in the future. Now let's discuss irregular verbs. As you might already know, the English language consists of many other languages, which gives English an interesting and unique etymology. However, as a result of much of the English language being derived from other languages, its rules do not always universally apply to its verb forms. For instance, most past tense verbs end in d or ed. However, not all of them do. Take a look at these regular verbs. The regular verb here is walk. The past tense of the regular verb is walked. The present tense of the regular verb is walk. And the future tense of the regular verb is will walk. Same with the regular verb hop, with the past tense being hopped, the present tense being hop, and the future tense being will hop. Another regular verb is care. The past tense of this verb would be cared, the present tense care, and the future tense will care. Notice how, for regular verbs, the past tense is the regular verb with ed at the end. Now take a look at these irregular verbs. Eat is one irregular verb with the past tense being ate, the present tense being eat, and the participle being had eaten. Know is another irregular verb with the past tense being knew, the present tense being know, and the participle tense being had known. Another irregular verb is freeze. The past tense is froze, the present tense is freeze, and the participle is had frozen. Notice how for irregular verbs the past tense of the verb does not end in ed. Note that English has over 200 irregular verbs, and the best way to learn them is through practice. To practice using irregular verbs, change the irregular verbs into the simple past tense. I blank about the new television series. He blank the lecture but not the textbook. She blank the dessert to the party. They blank from Laredo to Boston. I blank how to solve the problem yesterday. She blank many candies before her siblings found them. My advisor blank I was graduating this fall. You can pause the video now if you need some time to work these out. In the first example, I heard about the new television series. Heard is the irregular verb for the regular verb hear. In the second example, he understood the lecture. Understood is the irregular verb for the regular verb understand. In the third example, she brought the dessert. Brought is the irregular verb for the regular verb bring. In the fourth example, they drove from Laredo to Boston. Drove is the irregular verb. In the fifth example, I knew how to solve the problem yesterday. Knew is the irregular verb. In our next example, she had many candies. Had is the irregular verb. In the last example, my advisor thought I was graduating this fall. Thought is the irregular verb. Notice how irregular verbs cannot simply be changed into the past tense by adding ed at the end of the word. To improve your understanding and usage of irregular verbs, I recommend practicing as much as possible. Check out the end of this video or the description box for links to some websites that provide helpful practice. And that concludes our Grammar Refresher series. Thank you for watching this video, and to those who stuck by until the end. Feel free to refer back to this guide or any of our other guides for reference during any point in your studying. Keep a lookout for our upcoming videos, Common Clauses Part 1, Common Grammar Errors and Fixes, and Intermediate Grammar Verb Forms. Thank you and happy studying.